here today with one of my most favorite people, Hayley Kirkwood from the Coach Code. Welcome, Hayley.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much for having me. Likewise, you're such a beautiful friend, and I love being in your space all the time.
So, well, the feeling is very mutual, as you know. We share a lot of our experiences working together. Hayley and I met through our mindset coaching program a couple of years ago now, and just have remained really firm friends despite being the other side of the world to one another. Hayley was in the UK, but now is back in her homeland of Australia. And yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do at the Coach Code then? And then we're going to jump in and talk about our experiences as a 3-5 profile and what we have learned so far, and what our experiences are, so that we can help other people to navigate this sometimes challenging profile. But yeah, so what's your story, Hayley, with the Coach Code?
So, I am the CEO and the founder of the Coach Code, which is an online company, and it does everything that I love and that I'm interested in. So, we cover mindset, we cover spirituality, quantum physics, human design, tapping into creation, universal creation. So it's really diving into deeper realms. So it's really for the conscious entrepreneurs, the spiritually awakened people, people who want to know and find out more about the universe. What is this human game and experience all about that we're all here on this earth doing at this time? So it's really diving into the deeper mysteries of life, but also really understanding the psychology of being a human, and what we're all about. So there's a lot of different topics that we do. I never used to be open to a lot of this. I thought that my career in national security, working for the Australian government, was going to be the thing that I was going to do up until the point that I retired. So along the way, there was a flip in the script, and here I am, all this many years later doing this. So yeah, that's a bit about what I've done and my journey so far. So what
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you say about this, because we were just having a conversation, weren't we, about how the world is really changing, from people being in careers or relationships for, for the end of time, right? But for one, we're now living a lot longer. And we also, now that we have this amazing tool of human design, we can sort of understand that not all of us are built to do the same thing day in, day out, and that we are here to experience all that life has to offer, and embrace our humanness, right? And the experiences that we get to live out while we're here on this lifetime. So yeah, so my background is in the NHS. So I worked in the health service for most of my life, both in the NHS and then privately. And I started my business about 4 years ago, as a coach, predominantly helping people with sleep, actually. But then I became more fascinated with personal development. As an entrepreneur, it was like I really need to invest in myself in order to because that's the difference, right? When you're working for a big corporate company, they're investing in you, but when you're out there on your own, it's like, well, who else is going to do it apart from me? So so I've invested in lots and lots of programs. I started with money mindset. I started with all this kind of very surface level stuff that I knew I really needed to work at in order to be a successful business owner. But yeah, now I sort of evolved into helping people sort of on a deeper level. So I do a lot of subconscious work, rapid transformational therapy, combined now with human design, which is what I'm really excited to start sharing with the world, and using the two in combination together. So looking at somebody's human design chart, understanding where their conditioning is, where the subconscious programming is most likely to be playing out in their lives, and then using rapid transformational therapy as a tool to undo all of those limiting beliefs so that they can be in more alignment, live a life that feels what their version of success is, you know, so like in flow and ease, instead of fighting against who they're actually really not here to be. And sort of tapping into those gifts that they really that are innate within them. And yeah, so that's really where I'm at now. And obviously we both know about human design, and I think we both have been using it kind of loosely in our businesses for a while, anyway, and sort of applying it for our clients and sort of supporting them with that. But one of the things that we both share is this 3-5 profile. And I think, you know, from what I've learned about human design is that I think the 3-5 is the profile that really needs the most kind of support and reassurance from one another, that we're actually doing okay, you know, that it's actually all going to be all right, that we are doing a good job. Because sometimes, you know, it comes with challenges, you know, and I thought that it'd be really helpful for us to share some of our challenges that we've experienced as 3-5. So I'd really love to hear, obviously, from your experience working for the government and then like to where you are now. Yeah, like when you look back retrospectively, because of course you didn't necessarily know about human design right back then, but yeah, what have you learned about your experiences so far on this journey, and when you sort of reflect on your human design and as a 3-5 specifically?
So, well, with being a 3-5, the funny thing is, so just for some background context, I'm a projector, you're a generator.
Yes.
And when I first started getting into human design, you initially fall into the trap that a lot of humans do, where you just love to label everything and bucket everything up together and go, oh, you're this and I'm this and you're that and I'm that. But it goes so much deeper than that, so much deeper.
Yeah.
And when I first found out that you were a generator, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like, we're so different in so many ways. But then our relationship and our friendship, it formed online as we started to catch up more, especially when I was living in the UK on your time zone. And then I started to realize how much we had in common. And then I started to realize that it was a lot through the 3-5, through the 3-5 profile, is where I shared a lot of commonalities with you about some of the things that we were going through and some of the challenges. And I'm like, wow, it's so interesting, because I thought we were so different, yet there's still so much that I have in common with you. And I still feel like we're going through some of the similar challenges and on our journey at the same time.
Yeah.
And so from the 3-5 lens specifically, when I'm looking at my challenges, I've actually had a recent revelation and a deeper insight into my own understanding from my programming, and then blending that with being a 3-5 as well. One of my strongest conditionings that I had was coming out of the national security world, coming out of the defense, the heavy programming, the military environments. It was really difficult at the start for me to break a lot of that programming. It was just absolutely drilled into me. And then over the years and over the course of my personal development journey, as I started to break a lot of these patterns and come back into realizing who I was and what I actually wanted to do, one of the biggest programmings that I realized I had to break as a 3-5 were two particular masks that I was wearing. And it was just absolutely driving the show, whether I wanted it to or not. And that was the work hard mask, like the high achiever, working really hard. And it was the people pleaser. And when you combine those two masks together, you have this beautiful blend of, I can't seem to hit that upper ceiling and I can't seem to break through these blocks. I have no idea what's going on. And one thing that I realized from wearing those masks and then having this deeper perspective to realize that subconsciously that was what was really running the show, I did a bit of work on that to release that and to remove that. Because what I realized where that was really holding me up as a 3-5 was really giving myself that permission slip and giving me that space to allow me to explore and to do the trial and error process, to be able to go and experience the world. You're meant to try things, and it's meant to work, it's meant to fail, or at least according to what you think success and failure is. That's part of the process. That's part of what you're meant to do. It's it's less thinking and over analyzing it and getting stuck in analysis paralysis, and just going out there and doing it, getting your hands dirty and seeing what happens. And for me, one thing I realized was that was the quickest way that I learned, really. I could spend so much time in analysis paralysis, but that wasn't going to get me anywhere. It was the moment that I started taking action and implementing, even when it wasn't perfect or when I wasn't fully ready. That's where the true magic happened. That's when I started to realize, wow, this is where I'm growing. This is where I'm learning. I'm taking the most valuable lessons, and then applying that to the modern day business world, where you might have certain business coaches telling you that their way is their way and their way only. It's their way or the highway. You must subscribe to their methods. That never really worked for me. And I never truly resonated with that, because it was stopping that trial and error process for me. That was literally blocking the 3-5 trial and error process. I couldn't get out there, because the moment I wanted to do something, I had this belief that I'll subscribe to in my head that was saying, don't do that. No, no, no. Remember the good girl mask. You're supposed to do this. And
Yes.
then blending that with the overachiever mask, I go and do that thing really well. But that wasn't the case. I wasn't meant to be doing that all along. I was meant to be getting my hands dirty over here and doing this thing. And then if that works, great. If it doesn't work, that's great, because those lessons are what makes it so valuable.
Absolutely. And I guess as a projector energy type, right, when you are especially going against your energy type as well, in a way to live within those parameters of the conditioning that you formed growing up, right? You're going to notice it. And that's again where, sort of the energy type and the profile kind of come together, and you realize that maybe you feel exhausted, or as a result, because your body is just saying, like, this is not right for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the point where I could say, especially as a projector, and then putting myself into overdrive, hello, chronic fatigue syndrome, hello, adrenal fatigue, and being bedridden and having all of these chronic issues where I literally just drove myself into the ground because I wasn't in alignment with how I was designed to be. I was listening to what everyone else was telling you. This is the success blueprint. Follow this one and only path and blueprint. And I learned the hard way from being bedridden, looking up at a white ceiling, going, this does not work for me. Why is this working for everyone else, but not for me? And then that's when I started to get into human design and understand more about, right, I'm completely going against my design and what I'm meant to be doing with everything, even the way I was living my life, just everything. I had created my life in a way that was truly not working for me. And so it just drove me into the ground.
Yeah, totally, totally. I can so, relate to a lot of what you say. And I think, yeah, that three line, especially, that is the trial and error, right? That is trying through immersing yourself in the experience. And yeah, I mean, I remember my grandparents, growing up, I remember my grandparents, who, God love them, they're not on this plane anymore, but saying to me, oh, Rebecca, like, you're not doing another job, are you? You're not in changing job again, are you? And I'd be like, the shame attached to, changing job, because of course, in their era, it was very much, you get into a job, maybe you might change, but you certainly wouldn't change career at all. You would stay on the same trajectory. And of course that is right for some people, but not as a three line, really, because we are here to sort of sample and really report back to everybody what our findings are, which is exactly what we are doing in this video right now, is sort of share our experiences. So I'm really curious to know, like, so you were saying that it was your health that you noticed the most that was affecting you, and then um was that like the turning point when you moved into coaching, when you realized that you were sort of misaligned with your human design?
It was one of the many reasons. I actually fell into coaching not intentionally. It was by accident. Well, at least I think it was a divine synchronicity. But at that moment in my unawakened, unconscious autopilot life, I
Yeah.
wasn't intending on becoming a coach and going down this path. I had so many things going on in my life with working a job that I started to really fall out of love with. I had gone through a toxic relationship breakup, and then I started to get a lot of these health conditions, and I couldn't quite figure out why. But even while they were happening, I still kept pushing myself in the sports that I was competing in. And I just drove myself into the ground until I just crumbled. And I was struggling with not only chronic issues, but anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, all of these thoughts.
Mm,
And it went on for such a long time that one day I was like, I can't keep living life like this because this is not the way to live life.
mm,
And that's when I came across an ad, and it was, do this, it will fix your anxiety, it will help you with this. And it was getting into neuro-linguistic programming. And this was back
right.
in 2018. So that's when I first came across it. Absolutely no idea what it was for. I didn't even read the rest of the sales page. I just saw the two specific issues that I was going to go and fix myself for. And then I ended up going to that event and learning a lot more about how the human mind works, the subconscious mind, human psychology. And it was a whole nother world. And I was like, wow, just light bulb moment went off and things started to make a lot more sense for me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help it. Once I did that, then I did the master prac, then I did the hypnotherapy, then I came across all these other certifications, and I just couldn't stop because I wanted to soak up all the information and keep learning because I had gone from having absolutely no idea about any of these things, wondering why it's not in the schooling system, why they don't teach this to kids in primary school, to then learning it as an adult, going, wow, like this can change people's lives. Why don't more people know about this? And that was back in 2018. And that's really what started my journey. And even after the first few certifications, I still didn't fully have the intention to become a coach. I was still in the process of just healing myself and wanting to know how to help myself. And then once I got over that hurdle of, wow, I know how to help myself now, that's when I started to go, okay, this information is gold and I need to share this with everyone else. Then that's what started me going down the trajectory of becoming a coach and diving into this world.
Yeah, amazing. And I love that sort of story of like how things evolve, and now that you're like helping other people to achieve the same. And yeah, and again, I can really relate. I think there's always that epiphany moment, isn't there, where you're just like,
Yes.
wow, this is amazing. And yeah, when you're going from being kind of asleep to suddenly realizing that um that we can be empowered and we can you know, change the outcomes of our lives, that you know, and that things are happening for us and not to us, and that whole like victim, moving from victim state to an empowered state, I think is so vital. And yeah, and I suppose my own experience of that was very similar, in a sense that I was looking at a surface level. I think somebody had sort of said to me, I was in this group with some sleep coaches, and somebody asked about pricing, you know, or I no, I think I asked, like, do you put your pricing on your website or do you not? Like, you know, this is something that people ask a lot, like, do I put my pricing or not? Like, will it put people off? But if I put the price there, you know, at least then I know, you know, I'm getting the right people, and that I'm sort of like removing the people that, you know, are unable to afford my pricing, you know, and therefore I'm targeting the right audience, and so on. So that's where I was at that point, particular point in time. But somebody said, oh yeah, you should really check out, I think it was Denise Duffield Thomas. You know Denise, Denise
Yes, I
Duffield,
do. Yes.
a fellow Aussie. And she, yeah, and I started with her money program, and that's when I suddenly went, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And yeah, and I kept sort of saying to myself, it's all going to be okay, like this is all going to be okay. And like you, I'd been through a very tumultuous time, like with lots of changes and feeling, yeah, like in the NHS, you know, I was caring for people, which is what I really wanted to do, but at the same time feeling so unfulfilled and exhausted. And again, all these signs and symptoms of being misaligned, you know, frustration as a generator, right? All of those signs were there. And like you, I just end up being sick. Like I just end up being in bed for a few days and then wondering why was I sick all the time, sitting in a doctor's surgery. Lots of, for me, lots and lots of ailments, lots of kind of headaches, migraines, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is like PMS on steroids, you know, like with severe, like you, like sort of suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, like all of these kind of things, which now are no longer a problem with all the tools and the healing. And I suppose really, in my experience, is that there's a level of healing that we need to do first. And it's like this onion and we're like peeling it back, but there's this level of healing that we need to do first. But then beyond that, it's growth, and it's never ending growth, right? You're on this trajectory and like there's no getting off it. Once you're on it, like you're on it. And I think as a 3-5, sometimes, you know, it can feel quite challenging because it's when we talk about that consistency, right? You know, we hear in business, like you have to be consistent, you have to be posting every day, you have to be doing this, you know, do the same things. And that can feel quite challenging. But I'd love to hear some of the things that I suppose, yeah, like how have you navigated that? And how do you, what's the word I'm looking for? How do you kind of accept yourself more for being that way? Because sometimes it can be frustrating as hell, right? You know, we're like, oh
Yes.
shit, I've like changed my interest again. You know, yeah. How do you find self-acceptance?
I love that. That's such a beautiful question. And it's so great that you asked that too, because it's something that I didn't get straight away, especially when I first found out about my human design. I did initially fall into, I found out about it, I found out my design, and I'm like, this is cool, this is great. But then when I applied that to business and the online business world, and I started to find out that a lot of business coaches were managens and generators, and it was their method and their way. And I started to subscribe to that and just get burnt out in the process. I started to think, okay, well, what's wrong with me? Like, why can I not do this? And then I started to turn a little bit bitter, which is the non-theme for projectors. And I didn't know what it was at first, but the moment I started going, okay, I don't want to be a projector. Why did I end up with this design? This is not sustainable for business. This is not good for business. So I started buying into all those negative stories about myself and my design. And it took me on a journey, which I think is a beautiful journey in itself, because sometimes how do you know what the light is if you haven't experienced the dark? And I hadn't really fully accepted different parts of myself, whether it was the human design element or the 3-5, or where do I fit in the business world. And once I started going down that journey, I started to come across a lot of other projectors or people who don't want to subscribe to business advice just because someone says you have to out there. And that's when I started to realize that there are so many different ways of living in alignment with who you are. And part of that is just accepting yourself. It's accepting everything that you are. And it's beyond being a human and your soul. It's your design, it's your personality, it's everything that encompasses that. Because if you don't accept those parts, and if you're just rejecting that, you're still going to experience a lot of resistance in your life, a lot of negativity. And every time that I wasn't fully in deep acceptance of myself, I would fall into depression or get really bad anxiety. So really just listening to those emotions was an indicator and a tool that I started to use to go, okay, hang on a minute, that's just telling me something. And then when I could start to objectively look at it and reflect on it, I started to realize that I just wasn't living in alignment or listening to myself, my body, my intuition, and just seeing and knowing what it was that I really wanted to do and how I wanted to do business, and knowing that it was okay to be different. And we actually need the diversity. Everyone is so unique and different, and it's beautiful because we're all a piece of this bigger puzzle. And that's what makes this world so great. So it took me on a bit of a journey. But I've gone from just completely rejecting my human design, being a 3-5, being a projector, into going, you know what, I actually do love this because I've now learned how I work and how I function, and I can optimize my design. I know when to switch off. I know when to stop doing these things, and learning how to cultivate those skills is what has made life so juicy and just brilliant, because I didn't really know that before. Whereas now I know that that's the journey that it took me on. I've come to realize that. And so, yeah, it's brought me into a deeper place of self-acceptance now that I've got those beautiful lessons.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of the path that it took me down on.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I think the moment that we can kind of accept it with a lightness and almost like a fun spirit to especially to the 3 line. I mean, the 5 line, of course, is us helping other people, so we know the right things to say, right? We learn through trial and error, and then we know, because we have experienced those things, we're now out like sharing it with you and saying like, we know we've experienced this and we know exactly what it is that you need to hear. But I think it's yeah, it is almost like approaching things with this, like I say, this lightness um and looking at life as a bit of a game, right? Of, okay, well, what are all the things that I can experience? Because actually, as you said earlier, you know, if we were to do the same thing for the rest of our days, how would we actually be getting a fulfilling experience, really? You know, especially with the 3 line. So yeah, I think, as you say, it is tapping into that and embracing it rather than fighting against it. Because yeah, as with anything, whether it's emotions that we're trying to process or thought patterns that we're trying to disrupt, you know, the minute we start to really fight against those things, then, you know, our subconscious is just like gonna do the opposite, and it's just gonna make it even worse for us. So yeah, the minute that we kind of let go and just, you know, like, it's like the whole holding the sand in your hands theory, isn't it? Like, if you squeeze it, all the sand's just going to like squeeze out of your hands, but if you just let it go and hold it right there, it's so much easier. Yeah. And I think from my own experience, you know, I still, if I'm being really honest, it's something I have to work at. You know, some days I'm like, well, here we go again, you know, here we go. There's you know, I'm going to pivot slightly. And, you know, I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I come out of the personal development world now. Probably like you, like, once you're in it, you're in it. And I think in business, what is so powerful about a 3-5 is that because we learn all these things, right? Because we are the ones who are spending thousands on all these courses and these programs and learning all these things and taking what we need, we are the people who have all of that information to give out to our clients and share with them. And so I think, again, it's embracing that there's a whole lot of wisdom that comes with the 3-5 profile. And so it's kind of learning to love it rather than like battling against it, and seeing it, as you said, you know, seeing it for what it is, for that beautiful life experience, and all it can bring. So yeah, and is there anything else? I mean, you're a splenic projector as well. So you talked a little bit about intuition, and I wondered whether or not, yeah, just again, whether you think it's worth commenting on that in terms of, you know, maybe when you're ignoring your 3-5 profile, did you find that you were like shutting down those? Because of course they're very quiet nudges, aren't they? It's a very, very gentle nudge.
It is. It is. It's something that took a long time to realize and even identify, because my intuition is very subtle. And in a human design course, when someone had explained it in a way where it's almost like if your splenic authority, which is what I am, It's like picture an old lady comes up behind you. She whispers something very quietly and subtly in your ear, and then she just keeps going and she's never to be seen again.
Mm.
And that is literally what it's like. As humans, we would love our intuition to come down with a microphone or a speaker and scream it into our ears and hold up signs and saying, this is where you have to go. That's not how it works. And so not only does my splenic authority do that, whispers something and is off, it never comes back again. It's like, okay, I've passed on the message. There you go. And if I'm not paying attention, I'm on my life path, I'm doing my thing, I'm being busy, I'm not listening. That is it, because it's so subtle, I barely even hear it. And sometimes I can go, hang on a minute, wait, what? What did you say? Can you please come back here? Can you re-whisper that? I'm listening now. She's gone. She's not coming back again. So I had to learn to really start listening and identifying what those signs were, because when it is subtle, it is easy to miss if you're not listening. If you are in alignment, in the flow, you're in a state where you are being very receptive, you're joyful, you're doing the things that make you happy and light you up, it is a bit louder and it's a lot easier to digest, but it's subtle. And with that comes a lot of just trust and knowing that that's your intuition and it feels good and you know what it is. So
Mm.
over time, you start to cultivate skills of going, that's my intuition, or that's not my intuition, and just knowing that. But learning the signs initially, because I spent a lot of time demanding my intuition come back to me on a particular topic, on a particular sign, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
gone.
it's gone, it's gone. Yeah, and I think you know, it's really important at this point just to remind everybody that's watching this that, you know, with human design, the most important things that we can do, forget your profile lines, forget your 3-5, the most important things to begin with is your strategy and your authority. Because if you're not doing those two things, then everything else kind of goes by the wayside. It's a bit pointless, really.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so of course, you know, it's following our strategy or authority in conjunction with our 3 lines in order to know what are the right things, because in doing so, those things are going to lead us on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing,
Exactly.
which is exactly the path that we're meant to be on. So and I can say the very same thing of my own experience as a generator. You know, I should be following those sacral, that desire, that instinctive, like, gut reaction. But I'm an emotional authority as well. So I've got the emotional authority, I've got the sacral and the spleen. So I kind of have to work with all 3, which can be quite challenging. But
I was going
yeah.
to say, how do you do that? Working with all 3
Yeah.
of those.
So I have to do like one at a time, really. And predominantly the emotional authority. So I go with how I feel about something, provided I'm not in an emotional high or an emotional low. It's really how what emotional feeling do I have about things? And of course, we're all taught that we don't lead with your emotions. You should be leading with logic and your mind. And no, like, it's all the wisdom is in the body. So yeah, and also we're taught that, you know, emotions are negative or positive, and of course they're actually really just, that's just a label really for the emotions, because ultimately, you know, I might wake up one day and feel super low for no particular reason, but that is because I'm here to feel all of the spectrum of the emotions and share that with the world. But yeah, it's challenging. So you wait until so I wait until I'm neutral. I'm using the sacral at the same time. So if something goes, you know, let's say for example with human design, when I was like, yeah, like, oh, I'm getting a real sacral, like, yes, like, this is really good, I really love this. But then I'd sit with it. I have to, like, can't make a decision straight away. So I then have to sit with my emotions, ride through my emotional wave, which usually I would say like a day or 2. But if I'm making a big decision, I'll wait for about a week. If it's a really, really big decision, I'll wait for about a week. which again goes against societal conditioning. You reply to your email straight away. You must, give a reply straight away. Like time is money and all these things. But actually, in waiting, that's going to be a more aligned decision for me, but not just for me, but for everybody else around me. So, if I'm writing that email back, it's going to land with that person at exactly the right time, that they need to hear it. So I think for me, it's tapping into both. And then with the spleen, again, it's that gentle whisper of like, this is right for you, this is safe for you, this is, that sort of internal wisdom. And that is slightly quieter, but there's definitely like this sense of knowing whether something is right or not. And kind of bulking that all together back with the 3-5, or certainly with the 3 line, it's like for me, I notice myself, if I notice myself just not really feeling that lit up, a really telltale sign for me when I'm not really feeling that lit up about things is that if I'm not that interested, I get quite tired on an evening. I don't really want to do much. I just want to go to bed. I'm not really that interested in life. Whereas when I know that I'm doing something that lights me up, I could sit and, like, as a generator, I could sit and I could work on it and learn about it all night till 10, 11 o'clock at night, which is late for me. 11 o'clock at night, and I could just do it and just keep going and still feel like I had more in me to keep going. So I think that's a really good telltale sign that if you're feeling that way, the chances are that your 3 line now needs something a little bit new and a little bit refreshing. And of course, that's going to come along at the time that's right for us, and divine timing, but using our strategy and authority to respond to it again. So, or responding for me, or for your scenario, with your waiting for the invitation, it's the same, very similar, isn't it? If you see something, it's almost like an invitation for you if it makes you feel like your intuition is there and your intuition saying, yes, this is for you, Hayley. It's just tapping into strategy and authority ultimately at the end of the day. So any final thoughts or anything else you want to add before we wrap up at all?
I would love to know what your top 3 biggest lessons, or just any lessons, have been around being a 3-5 and navigating those challenges, particularly in business, in the online landscape for you.
Yeah. I think goes back to what we were saying about, human design, without a doubt, I think has brought me this level of self-acceptance. It's like the minute I had my chart read, it was that validation. So I think self-acceptance and self-awareness is the key, right? And the minute you start thinking, oh, I should, if ever there's a should, like, it's not for you, right? You never ever should follow the word should. If you hear yourself saying that, like, just forget it. So I think that's been a key thing for me. If I hear people saying this is the way you should do it, no, it's not the way. Like, everybody has their own way. And I think the most amazing thing with human design is it is the science of differentiation. And as you said, 3-5 energy types is just the very, very top of the icing on the very big, deep, juicy cake that's down below, right? And there's so much more to it, that we are all the same, but we are all so uniquely different. So self-acceptance, self-awareness. I think for me, it's the second thing would be like recognizing when you're out of alignment, so in particularly as a business owner, when I notice myself losing the enthusiasm, okay, well, what is it now that I need to add in to make me feel that I'm maybe learning something new? And it doesn't mean you have to completely bulldoze your business right down to the ground, but it might be that you take a slight pivot, or you add something else in, which is exactly what I've done. It's been mindset coaching, it's been RTT hypnotherapy, it's now been human design. And it's just adding all those different tools into the bag, because there's always going to be something else you can learn, always. And I think that helps me to keep the enthusiasm. And then the third thing, oh gosh, what would the third thing be? I honestly really, and you know how much I love you and my beautiful friend, but I think actually being around other 3-5s, or at least other people who understand human design, that can cheerlead you, that can say, you know what, on the days when you forget that, you're out of alignment, and your friend can just pick you up and say, hey, this is normal, this is the 3-5 way, and this is how we live life, right? But and reminding you of all the amazing vibrancy that a 3-5 life actually can have and embody. So yeah, I think it's like people being around the right people for sure can help kind of embrace that wonderful vibrancy of the 3-5 life.
Absolutely. I love that. I love all of those insights and wisdom and sharing that you've given us as well. And I couldn't agree with you more about being around other people. Speaking from experience with you, we've had calls together where we've been able to help each other out, or just talk about how we're designed, like knowing each other's designs as well, and saying, you're currently going through this or navigating this situation, and then offering some insights or wisdom around either our design or giving us some perspective, which just it's such a relief. It's you can just go, oh, and just relax your shoulders and go, I understand this so much more. But because sometimes when you're in the trenches, you're not thinking like that. You've just got the lens of, I'm going through this right now and I'm experiencing this. And
Mm.
then you've got that beautiful friend like you that comes in and just says something, and you're like, yes, yes, I feel good now. I know life is happening for me and not to me. So that proximity is power. And I think it really helps having people like that in your space.
Totally, totally. And I saw a post the other day, just before we wrap up, that I thought I'd share, but um, it was about a group of sheep. Okay, whatever, whatever. What's the terminology for yeah, like a herd of sheep, is it? And inside of there was this wolf, and the wolf had like this little sheep's hat with the little ears on, and it was like disguised as one of the sheep, and it's sitting inside this like pen with all these sheep. And really, and it was a projector actually that made this post, but I thought it was really interesting. And they were saying about, often when we're doing this work, we can feel like we're the only ones. We can feel like quite lonely. We can feel, like we're surrounded by the sheep, that maybe they're different to you, or you feel like you're different to them, and you're further along on your journey. And that can feel, yeah, quite lonely and quite isolating. But actually, there are people out there who are on the same trajectory as you, and they are working to improve themselves. And it's just getting yourself out there, immersing yourself in those worlds where those people exist, right? And as a 3-5, throw yourself into some of the courses. Don't worry about it. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't, because you will gain something from it. And look at the friendships that we have formed through immersing ourselves into some of these programs. So I think it's just kind of using your strategy and authority to get you into the right places where you need to be. So use your strategy and your authority, and those places will lead you to the right people who you can just feel so grateful to have in your world, like you, my wonderful friend. So yeah, so I want to thank you so much for this discussion. I think we may have gone on slightly longer than anticipated, but as always, we always have a lot to chat about. And thank you so much. And I think we'll have to do this again. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Hayley.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rebecca. It's been an absolute pleasure as always. I love chatting to you about anything and everything in the world. So I'm definitely down for some more chats with you in the future.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Hayley.